Oh, so you're running Windows on the Mac, and then Visual Studio on.
Is there anybody in this room right now that's not on the Perl Study Hip Chat? Because I'm going to be sending like just a link to this page, in case y'all want to go there. That's not it. All right. Scott, I invited you to. We have a hip chat room, and I just sent a link to this page if you plan on getting on your computer. So I think everybody else is on the in the room.
Visual Studio actually is kind of interesting for advocacy because it's smart, but it's harder to visualize. They got it. Yeah, but how much longer are you actually doing when someone's going to do some pretty good text for you?
Yeah. I had the same issue when I started on the website.
Oh no. Oh, Dreamweaver's so much slow. I hate Dreamweaver. I know.
Are we okay to go? Thank you. All right, y'all. Thanks for coming. Hopefully this will be useful, and I'll figure out how to more effectively do these things. So, welcome to Perl Study. I'm Brett Estrade, and this is going to be the first of just a continuous stream, I think, of talks. Hopefully they will not be by me. Hopefully we'll get some people in this very room to give talks as they're learning Perl and other cool things. It's kind of one of the main points is to put yourself in the position where you're actually talking about the stuff you're actively learning about. So I feel like that might put some good pressure on people to learn and provide some motivation outside of whatever you have that's driving you yourself. And I have a couple of questions. Who has zero programming experience? Okay. Programming can be shell scripts. I mean, it doesn't have to be on Linux. So, hand still, zero? Okay. That's actually probably a good thing. Who has experience programming only on Windows? Okay. I thought you might be. There might be some things to unlearn, but it's still good to have that perspective. And who has basic experience with shell scripting? Or more? I know there's some experienced people here. Okay, and then who has some limited or more experience with Perl? I mean, if you modify Perl code and it didn't break something, then that counts. Okay. All right. Good.
I think it broke.
Okay. Who has gotten exposure to Perl through osmosis and through documentation?
Through what?
Osmosis, just exposure, seeing it. Sometimes it starts to make sense in some way. Okay, good. I was just getting a feel for the room. So nobody needs a computer today. It might be helpful if you want to kind of play around with what I'm doing, but it may also be a distraction to you. So in the future, when I have these and I say, hey, Kevin, I say that let's have a computer. Or maybe doing some lab style things, then definitely a computer would be required. And then we can also talk over the HIP chat room or in person or email how to set up a development environment. What I'm going to be going through right now is just on my Mac. It provides a very Unixy user land, so there's not going to be really any requirement to use Linux for me today, but in the future I may opt to use either a virtual machine or a sandbox or something that gets spun up on OpenStack. Okay, so if you're unfamiliar, okay, who's unfamiliar with Linux or Unix or FreeBSD? Okay, everybody's been on a virtual machine. Okay, most people use Mac, so whether you know it or not, that's a Unix. So maybe a little more familiar than you think. Okay, good. This page here, this is kind of the course page. I don't call it a course. It's not really a course, and I say spring 2018. That doesn't really mean that we're going to only be doing this for the spring or it's going to repeat in the summer. It's just something I did. But I've listed some resources that are all on the eWiki. We have a lot of really good PDFs. And in particular that are relevant for today, we've got these cheat sheets. We're going to be talking about kind of some of the motivations behind Perl through example, and there are lots of command line utilities that Perl kind of just implements, and awk is one of them, sed is one of them. And then I may get to some Perl predefined variables, but that I might be jumping the gun there. This book, Unix Power Tools, it's kind of old, but it was like the first thing I ever picked up a long time ago, and it really got me up to speed about what is available in most Unix systems. I consider it almost like a Bible. We have it available. It's excellent. Let's see what else. Learning the bash shell. This is important because a lot of what Perl gives you and the kind of experience that you really need to be wanting from it is based on shell scripting. And to come at it from a different perspective or some kind of, different like programming paradigm, like object-oriented programming or even C-style programming is kind of, it'll hurt you in the beginning because that's not really how Perl came to be. It really sprung out of Unix command line and shell scripting and automating system administration. Okay, so and in this book I added recently Perl one-liners. It's the same guy that does the cheat sheets, Peter Crummins. I don't know if y'all have ever seen his blog, but he's like prolific. He's just been writing awesome blog posts for years now, and he basically gives away whatever he does for free. This book was the first book that he actually published, and I felt obligated to pay for it. So I'm sharing it with y'all. I'm not saying y'all have to go buy a copy, but I at least felt good enough buying it that I did so. It certainly helped me out. Anyway, it's got a lot of interesting one-liners. It could provide a lot of opportunity for us to break down one-liners during these talks. I can foresee some people maybe picking a one-liner, breaking it down, and just explaining it to everybody so that we get a really good deconstructed view of what Perl is doing, not just in the command line, but how it translates to an actual Perl script. Okay, I'm done talking. Maybe not. All right. So the way I'm going to do things today, I've got a side-by-side comparison of a bash script and a Perl script. And they do the exact same things, and I tried to make them as similar as possible. Okay? So if you have experience with the command line, or especially shell scripting, it doesn't even really have to be bash shell scripting. A lot of people got started with C shell, which most people don't write shell scripts in anymore, hopefully. But it provides a really good basis for understanding. And for some of you, this will be like way super basic. But if you stick with me through what we're doing with this these talks, then it'll really like give you a good firm basis for understanding other things that Perl does, and being able to tell the difference between what's kind of like an inherent characteristic of Perl versus something that may have been bolted on later on, like object-oriented programming. Okay, so it really gives you some good perspective. So I'm going to start talking about this by just asserting that Perl is basically Unix. Okay, so the things that Unix provides, the user experience that it provides in userland. I'm not talking about the operating system, the process handling, the memory management, all that stuff. Stuff that you see like userland that you would be experiencing if you were in a command line shell is really embodied in Perl. And the reason that is because it sprung out of writing bunches of shell scripts and specialized tools in C. And one key feature of shell scripting or Unix command line in general is that it utilizes, it's one of the Unix philosophies. There are many specialized tools. Okay, you write one tool and it does something very specific and it does it very well. An example of that is the cat command. A cat command is short for concatenation, but it just literally just dumps the contents of the file to the screen. Well, you might think that that's not very useful, but you can connect the dumping of the output of a file with another command using a pipe. And I'm not going to be really getting into that part, but you could use the cat command to dump the contents of a file, and you can search over that file using another very scoped program called grep. You can use it to search large amounts of text for specific strings. So suddenly, using cat and grep, you can find in a huge file very specific command or very specific lines. We use it, developers and QA, anybody that's working on code. Scott uses it all the time. It helps you find things that you're looking for in this huge, just massive amount of text. So it's, whereas some people might maybe say in the Windows world would want to write a general purpose program that you give it a file name and then you give it a search string and then it does all this stuff behind the scenes and then returns, what lines have these strings. You would, and you don't really know what's going on, you suddenly have this multiplier effect where you've got a bunch of small tools and you can put them in ways that you can basically just compose special programs on the fly, and it's pretty awesome. So that whole philosophy was imbued into Perl. So when I say Perl is Unix, it's basically like the liquid form of Unix. It is or the clay form of Unix. You can as a programming language, this is what Unix would look like, in my opinion. That's my assertion after many years of playing with it. So there's, at its most basic level, there's not a lot different from shell scripts and from Perl scripts. Shell scripts are interpreted by the shell. So when you fire up a terminal, well, this is Vim, but when you fire up a terminal and you have the command line, you're in an interactive shell session. So it is waiting for you to tell it what to do. Well, you can write a file of, say you got to do an administrative task and it takes a couple of commands and you have to do it every day and you get really tired of it. Well, you can put all of those commands into a text file, and that's called a shell script. And instead of typing out all those commands every time, every day, or every hour, you can simply call that shell script. And the shell script would then be read by the shell and then interpreted. It's not compiled. Perl is not compiled like, say, C. Shell is not compiled like C. And it would issue those commands exactly as you had written them. Now, the shell will provide some control flow or flow control structures like if statements or loops, which you associate with programming languages. Okay, Perl does the same thing. Where I have some, well, I'm not going to talk about their differences, but in doing this, I thought that I would start seeing a difference between a Perl script and a bash script when I got to using like arrays and associative arrays, or hashes as they're called in Perl. But I did, and I was actually surprised to find out that bash supports all of that. I've always stayed in a really basic subset of bash shell, which is really supported by the original Bourne shell, because for portability reasons. So I really never dug into the guts of bash. But bash is actually pretty featureful. It's surprising. So these two scripts are going to be doing the same exact thing, and I'm going to be going over each section separately. I'm going to show you that Bourne shell can do the built-in stuff that Perl can do simply by invoking some other utilities. One of them is awk. The word awk comes from the initials of the creators of the utility. I think Aho was one. He was a famous computer scientist. I don't remember. On the cheat sheet, they say who invented it. In any case, there's a lot you can do with awk. The example I'm going to show you is that you can use it to extract stuff from text. Okay, that's something that is done very commonly in Perl. The other one we're going to use is sed. Sed is short for stream editor, and basically in Perl that would translate to a search and replace in a string using a regular expression. So we'll see how similar those things are. And then I'm going to talk about just regular indexed arrays, so arrays that are indexed from 0 to whatever. I'm going to talk about associative arrays. In Perl, associative arrays are called hashes. And really, the defining feature between the defining feature of associative arrays is instead of having a implicit index like 0, 1, 2, or the first item, second item, third item, and referring it to it that way, you can actually have a key. Like you can have a named key and point it to the value. So a regular array just has values. An associative array has a label for each value that you can then refer to it, and it's just more meaningful for human programmers. And okay, we're not going to talk about that today. All right, does anybody have any questions? Have I thoroughly confused anybody? Okay, hopefully this will help kind of give an example of why, at its very basic level, Perl is just a shell scripting language.
You've told us what awk and sed stand for, but you haven't told us what Perl stands for.
Oh, okay. So, first I should say that I've gotten some flack by calling it Perl in all uppercase, and I kind of do that on purpose because a long time ago people didn't really know how to write it, and if you ever get like spam for job offers or from recruiters, one of the red flags that you look for is if they spell Perl in all capital letters, because that basically means they don't really know what they're talking about, or that's just another acronym or thing that they want to throw in there.
You're trolling.
Hmm?
You were trolling.
I was trolling. Yeah. So now, what does Perl stand for? What is it? There's a lot of things that it stands for. I think the most uh, normal sounding one was it the practical extraction and reporting language, and then there's something eclectic rubbish lister. What does the P stand for there? I forget. But the history of the name Perl, Larry Wall wanted to call it Perl, spelled like what the oysters have. But I think he, in an interview, I think Garrett, you found it, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. I think we can link it again. But he said that he heard that there was some kind of graphics language of the same name, so he shortened it to just be Perl, and it kind of just stuck. And it's actually the same reason why Ruby is called Ruby, because they wanted to. It was very much inspired by Perl, but also it was. I mean, the Perl is not a gem, but it's kind of a precious thing, so I guess they wanted to use a Ruby. And then, what else do I want to say about that? Oh, okay. So capital Perl in all caps it's just a joke, but ignorant people trying to recruit you say it. And then if you're referring to the language itself, then it's capital P and then all lowercase letters. So capital P E R L, Perl. If you're referring to the interpreter, the actual utility, which is by definition the final arbiter as to whether or not something is syntactically correct in Perl, or is a bug, or is a feature. It has to do with how that utility is actually taking what you give it and what it's doing. So it's the final arbiter. But that's in all lowercase. So all Unix utilities are in lowercase. And so that's why sometimes you see capital P, E, R, L, sometimes you see little p, and there's some confusion. But there's very specific context in which you would use one over the other. So that's what I know about the history of it. Okay, we're going to try and go through this. It's 11:30, is that right? And we'll try and get through this at a reasonable pace. Okay, so on the left-hand side is the bash script. On the right-hand side is the Perl script. I tried even to match the numbers, so hopefully that's right. Okay. What this is doing, the first line number 6, it's printing out one of the kind of implicit things that the shell knows, which is a path. So there's let me show you what is actually in the environment. So if I type in env, okay, I'm going to get a list of stuff. And each of those things are kind of like variables that the shell just has access to at all times. And all processes that are run under this shell can get this information, and it's really just it's literally your environment. I mean, it defines the conditions under which things are executing. And shell scripts and Perl scripts have access to this. Now, path is very important. Path is a list of places the shell will look for a command. Okay, so if I just type in Perl -v, that's just going to output some information, okay, about the Perl. But we don't really know where that Perl utility is. So if I wanted to find out where it was, then I would use a command called which and then Perl. And currently, the Perl that is set up, it finds first in the paths. So it searches the list of paths from left to right. The first place it finds the utility, it'll say this is the path for that utility. So in my environment, I have the path set up so that this is the Perl it finds. It's in users Brett Perl 5 Perl brew Perl 5.18.4. Don't worry about what Perl brew is. It's neat, but it's out of scope here. Anyway, so when I echo path, I don't even have to define path initially in either the bash script or the Perl script. In the Perl script, it's actually kept in an associative array called env, okay? And then I just use the key path. So rather than here in the shell script, I'm just using path directly, I have to tell Perl, okay, this is an environmental variable, and I want to get this one out of the associative array. So what I can do in the command line here, I can do echo, which is like print, and then dollar path, okay, and that's kind of what's showing. So I'm going to run the shell script now, and it shows, it basically just outputs path is and what the path is. Now script name, that's a special variable, it's $0, okay, it's the same exact thing in Perl. So Perl and the bash shell use the same exact variable, I'll show you. And then it's able to report its process ID. So any process that gets spawned in a Unix system gets assigned as a unique, at the time, a unique integer, so that you can refer to the process number, and the operating system, you can send it signals, and operating system can basically help manage it. All right, so so the Perl example, it outputs the same exact thing. I'll do the shell one again. Okay, they output the same thing except for the process ID. Well, the process ID is going to be different, okay, because it's increasing, it's assigning different things. I'm never going to get the same process. Well, I guess that's not really true, but it's very unlikely I'll get the same process ID number if I run two processes, one right after the other. Okay. So this is the block here that resulted in that. So what I want to point out is that in the bash script, it's $0, and the Perl script, it's also $0. Okay. The difference here is that to print in shell, you use echo. To print in Perl, it's print. The other difference here is in shell, echo implicitly puts a new line at the end. So if you echo something, it will return. So echo, if I do echo hi, you're going to see that line. If I do, I'm just running it. This is a Perl one-liner. It's basically like running that thing I did for the shell. It's gonna. You see how it didn't put a new line here? Like it's hi apples instead of hi, and then next line. Okay, to fix that, what I would do is oh wait, what do I need to do here? Quotes matter. We'll get into that some next time, I think. Okay, so I do hi and then new line, and now it does the right thing. So that's why here I do the new line, but it's still $0, $0. Dollar path, I have to dig into the env hash in Perl to get that information. It's keeping track of a lot of stuff, so Perl kind of has to differentiate what it's getting. So now this double $, that's process ID in shell, and no coincidence, it's the same exact variable in Perl. Okay, so that's this part. Now, if you're getting confused about which one is Perl and which one is shell, then I think I've done a good job, because that's the whole point, is they're very, very similar. Okay. Okay. So next thing I want to show is I'll keep those live. I'm going to talk about argument handling. I'm not going to talk about like advanced argument handling or doing fancy things, but if in a lot of times in a shell script or even in a Unix utility, you're going to pass it some flags or some command line things. Okay, well the shell script needs a way to access that information, and so does the Perl script. And here it's just I'm showing you how to do it on the most basic level. So when you pass, actually I found okay, when you pass command line argument in a shell script, you reference that using a dollar number. Okay, so the first argument is going to be $1 in a shell script, and this is kind of different in Perl. In Perl, there's an argv array, and since Perl arrays are 0 indexed, we're getting the first argument using argv0. And then So that's an assignment, and then we can print what the argument was using the same print as before with a new line. On the shell script, this is the assignment. There's no spaces in between the variable name or the value, and then we're going to echo. Now, I think I should have talked about this. So variables in Perl that are single values, I'm not talking about arrays or data structures, they are preceded with what is called a sigil, or all variables are preceded with a sigil. The $sign in Perl represents a scalar value, so it's like a single value. So it's not a list, it's not an array, it's not a hash, it's not a reference, it's just a value. So it's a single value. It could be a string, it could be a number. There's some cool hacks you can do with it, but we're not getting into that because that's just going to be confusing. But just suffice it to say that $variable name is going to be pointing to a single value. It's kind of similar on the shell side, except when you do an assignment for a variable, you don't include that $sign, okay? And but when you want to use the value, you will include that $sign. So here, the arg1 is being assigned to $1, which is a value that you're passing in, and then you want to echo out arg1. That's when you use the $sign. Now, shell does not use sigils like Perl does, but we'll see in an array example that it kind of looks reminiscent, or Perl looks reminiscent of what at least Bash is doing. But I have a feeling that maybe what Bash is doing was influenced a little bit by Perl, but we'll see. Okay, so now I'm going to run the shell scripts. The argument I'm passing in is just hi in all caps. So, and it's printing out right here. Okay. So whatever I run, whatever I pass in there is getting printed out. That's the $1 that's getting assigned to arg1, and then we're printing out $arg1. And then the same thing is going to apply to the Perl script. Do the same thing. So output's a little bit different because of new line shenanigans, but oh no, it's the same. Okay, so this is the Perl output. Again, the only difference here, well, I guess the script name is going to be different. So script name is different, process ID is different, but everything else is the same. Same path, and same output of the whatever I'm passing it in through the command line. Okay, so yo. What was that? See, I'm getting confused. All right, yo. Okay. So, would it be more clear if I commented out the stuff that we have just talked about? All right. Stop it. All right. I didn't test it doing this, so I may blow some things away that I use later on, but that's okay. Okay. All right. So we talked to who has a question about argument handling.
What is sigil again?
The sigil is the $sign.
Okay.
It in Perl. Well, I'll show an example, but Perl uses a different sigil for each data type. So it's $sign for a scalar, it's an @ symbol for an array, it's a %sign for a hash, whereas the shell script does not differentiate data structures, mainly because it wasn't originally it didn't support data structures. It was very much.
The shell script is designed more implicit.
The shell script is just more simple. It wasn't designed for data structures like arbitrary data structures, and that's kind of where Perl and Shell diverge in terms of power and being able to write really succinct programs. Is how it's able to handle different data structures. It's kind of a pain in the butt in Shell, but
I got a question.
yes.
If you put in 2 arguments, is it just going to print the first one?
The way I've set it up here, if we want to add support for a second argument, that's a good, very good question. So I just added support for a second. Hi there. Oh, there you go. And then I think that there's an argument array that you can access in Bash. At least like there's like ways that you can actually do like processing of flags, and then the way that you process the flags at like dash whatever, dash v whatever. There's some ways that you can actually iterate over all of the things you were passed, and then but that's a little more advanced. So in Perl. In Perl, first of all, just assume that's how you declare a variable for right now, okay? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to really get into scoping today, but that's part of Perl. So it's going to be arg2 equals, and now I said it, the arg-v array is 0 index, so in order to get the second element, it's actually going to be the index of 1. And then to replicate what we did, the shell script, it's going to be hi there. Okay.
Okay, cool.
It's a very good question. Very good question.
If you print that with no index, it will print everything?
Without the index?
Yeah.
No.
You just print the array.
Oh, in Perl?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a easy way to do that, but I'm not going to cover it today.
Okay.
But yes, you can absolutely do that. This is just very simple. I know that I'm going to be defining this in the first position. I'm going to be defining that in the second position, and then it's really a brittle way to do it. Like it's not the most flexible way to create command line handling, but it's the most basic. So when you want to do something more flexible, that's when you would start accessing the array. So it is available to you as an array, and you can do all the array stuff to it. But the actual array is $argv. So if I did something like I could do print at argv, does anybody know what this is going to tell me?
The number of arguments?
Yes. So, oh wait, Perl did something unexpected. So it is printing everything.
I never know when Perl's going to concatenate and when it's going to give it the scale.
I know, like you would think that this is scalar context. Okay,
I know, we said it's an array context and print's taking array context.
Print must support array context. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to force it to scalar context, which means it is going to be interpreting an array as a scalar. So in this case, I'm expecting a 2. Okay, there's a 2. I didn't do the new line, but Scott's right. It shows in scalar context. It shows you how many arguments you have. And now I know that Perl supports printing out arrays. Okay. Cool. All right, so any more questions about that? What I'm doing here is just using Vim's regular expression feature to, I'm saying, replace the beginning of all the lines I've highlighted with a pound. The pound is a comment. Oh yeah, it's a pound. The pound is a comment in both shell scripting and, or at least born-derived shells and Perl. I think it's in C shell also, or is that a % sign? I forget. Yeah. Okay, so now we're gonna do something cool. This is string replacement. So basically search and replace. Okay. So I said in Unix we have this this utility called sed, string editor. So string edit. This is a regular expression. Okay, you read this as replace the string name, and it's case sensitive, with the string Bob, and then so we're going to be sending it. This is an example of using two different programs or two different commands to kind of get an overall net effect. I'm using echo to send the string hi there name and into sed. Sed, like most Unix utilities, knows to take this input and do something with it. And that's what this straight up and down line is. That's the pipe. Okay. So what this is going to be doing is it's feeding the string hi there name to sed, and we're telling sed to replace name with Bob. Okay, and let me run that real quick. Okay, so hi there Bob. If we just ran it, it would say hi there name, but sed is actually replacing that string. Okay, to do the same thing in Perl, it actually requires 3 lines, not 1. Well, you could probably get it smaller, but this is how you would do that. Now, I'm sure I know that if you've been looking at cPanel code or QA code or examples, Perl examples in our documentation, you're going to see the squiggly line and the search and replace regular expression. So it shouldn't really be too foreign, but this is a good example of what I mean. It takes basically this functionality that sed might provide in a shell script and it gives you access to it programmatically through the language. And I'll go over this quickly with you. So this is an assignment. I'm just assigning the string, and here I'm explicitly putting the new line, so we get the. Excuse my French. Okay. This is a string assignment to a scalar, and then this here is how you apply a search and replace regular expression to a variable that contains the string we just assigned. So we're replacing name with Bob here, and then the next line we're just printing it. Okay. So, any questions?
So the equals the line.
Okay.
Is that the Perl equivalent of the SCV command?
Kind of, yes. That tells Perl that. So to break that down for you, it tells Perl to take whatever is in $string and apply this regular expression to it. This S indicates that it's a search and replace.
Okay.
And then the search and replace basically has 2 sections. What you want to find, which is name. What you want to find, which is name, and what you want to replace it with, which is Bob. This is the most basic search and replace you can do. It is basically regular expressions in Perl is a separate language on its own. And you can do a lot of stuff with it. This is about as basic as you get.
I was just gonna say, you said a hip check.
Oh yes.
It's a little trick.
Yeah, you can if you want to replace something in something you just said, then you can do s/ whatever you want to replace / whatever you want to replace it with, and then /. Yes, that's a cool feature. I think I did it one day just like out of habit, and it worked.
With it too.
Yeah.
The other thing you didn't want to say, and then S in the line, and you'll screw it up a couple times. But then once you get the hang of it, it works.
Yeah, I think I've screwed up so bad that I was doing a search and replace on the search and replace command I had just issued.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with myself and a lot of failed tricks like that.
That's a good trick. Don't do it yourself.
Yeah, I got a lot of gifts making sure they're showing up.
Yeah.
Comments.
Sorry.
No worries. All right, how are we doing on time? Okay. String extraction. I'm going to try and blow through this one. Using awk. Okay. What I'm doing here is when you feed something to awk, it automatically plucks things out of the string based on some delimiter. The default delimiter is the space. So I'm sending it this string. It's just root and then this number. I got this from when you list processes, it'll show user and then process ID and a bunch of other stuff. This is just I just copy and paste a little part of that. But anyway, if you send it something that's delimited by spaces like this, you can reference it immediately using $1 and $2. Okay, and this is not the same $1 and $2 that we were using above to process arguments. This is known only to awk, since awk is a separate program and it doesn't really know what the $1, $2 are that the shell script does. What happens here is that it prints out user is root. Oh, I missed a space. User is root and proc ID is 1464. User is okay. So awk is kind of funny, but this is how you concatenate strings and variables in awk. So I missed a space there. But anyway, okay, that's fixed. Now to do the same thing in Perl, we're going to do something similar as before. We just have a string assignment. Now this is a little more complicated. It is not a search and replace. It is plucking out of this string the things that you want. It is basically mimicking the very basic behavior of awk. Regular expressions are so flexible that to do something basic looks very complicated. Okay, and but that pays off later on when you want to do really complicated stuff. It doesn't look. It looks only a little bit more complicated than basic. So this caret here is just beginning of the line. The open parens is a capture group, which means I want to put everything that I find defined by this regular expression that are between these two parens into variables that I can access later. And the variables that you can access later on match are, no surprise, $1 and $2. So it's again, it's very similar. This is the awk functionality of Perl that's built in as part of the language. So and then here you go. It plucked these things out, proc ID and user. And then, all right, so arrays, I think we can get through this real quick. This was the part that surprised me about the functionality of Bash now, is that defining and looping through arrays is not unlike Perl. So really you just assign, this is an assignment, but you assign it a list of things. This is array, it's just generic name. Users, NS, I guess this would be name server. I got this off the internet at this URL, so I didn't write this. And then we're going to echo the first user, echo the first name server, and then this is a for loop where we're iterating over arrays. So we were talking about earlier about iterating over the argument array. This is an example of how you would iterate over an array in general in Bash. So I'm going to run this real quick, and then you'll see that it listed www is the first user. This address is the first name server, and then I iterated over all of the users here. Okay. In Perl, it's going to be very similar. This is an array assignment in Perl. Okay. This is an array. So we're assigning array, just like array over here. Value 1, value 2. Users. It's all the same values. NS, and then here we're printing the first user, so it's going to print out www again, and then the first name server, it'll print out .10 again, and then here is where we iterate over all of the stuff in the users array. Okay, and I'm going to run that, and then here it's basically the same output as this is the Perl script, and this is the shell script. So y'all can see how similar they are, right? They're very, very close. Now, the big difference with the Bash shell and Perl is how you access the arrays. So here, Bash has this syntax where you kind of wrap it. It's $, and then you wrap it in some curly braces, and then you use the variable name and then the index. Okay, so index 0, square bracket 0, closing bracket, closing curly brace. Now in Perl, we're dropping the curly braces. Okay, so it's very similar. Same thing with the NS. Really, syntactically, we're just dropping the curly braces in Perl. But Perl knows that NS is actually an array, and when it sees the $, in front of NS, it looks for this index to pluck it out of the list and then print it. So you're basically pulling out a scalar value from an array. And this is why I said sigils can get confusing. And that's kind of a discussion for a different day, how they differ and all the things you can do with it. Now, iterating over the array, I'll do the Perl one first. Perl for each my, that's just a scoping thing, $user. So I haven't defined user before. I defined users, but not user. And then this construct here, it basically says iterate over all items in this user's array, assign the value that you're currently on to the variable user, and then make that available within the looping block. And then so we can do a print $user, and it'll loop over each one in turn, in order, and print that out. The same thing is happening here, except the syntax is kind of backwards compared to Perl. And I suspect I need to look and see when Bash introduced array support like this. I suspect that Perl influenced it here rather than the opposite. But in any case, it's $users, just like up here. But instead of having an actual index, you're putting an @ So Bash will say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to be providing everything as a list to the for loop. And then here, it's basically the same thing that the Perl's doing. For user in this list of users. So it's going to iterate over each user, and for each iteration of the for loop, you'll access the current value using $user, which is right here. Okay. Yes.
Was line 27 necessary?
Into Bash?
Both.
Yes.
Why?
I think this is confusing. The variable name is array.
Yeah, but you're not using it.
No, Professor.
Oh, am I? Oh no, I copied and pasted this.
Okay.
It's not necessary to what I'm doing below. So
Got it.
no, but that's a good point. Let me remove that because it's confusing. Okay, thank you. All right, now for the really where Bash really starts to look ugly compared to Perl, and this is the last thing we'll do. So a hash, like I said, is an associative array rather than having a list of things that's implicitly indexed 0 through whatever. We're gonna create a hash. It's a key value pair of things. Another key feature, I don't know how it is in Bash. I think it's probably ordered because it looks like they hijacked the array syntax. But in Perl, hashes are unordered. So arrays are ordered, hashes are unordered. If you iterate over an array all day long, it'll come out in the same order. Okay? If you iterate over a long hash in Perl, the order in which the things get printed or iterated over will change. And that's kind of a security feature of Perl. They've got some nice things where you can adjust how randomly they get listed each time or how similar they get listed each time. But in general, and a lot of bugs come out of this, even here to this day, because people will assume that iterating over a hash results in the same order every time. And that is a very bad assumption. So, okay, that was a sidebar. So here we're declaring we're saying we want to create a hash, okay? And then we're assigning just two elements. One, the key is foo, and the value is bar. The other one, the key is herp, and the value is dirt. And then this is where we iterate over the hash. So here, it's a little bit different. There are many ways to iterate over a Perl hash, but this is probably the most common. You want to iterate over its keys. So it's for each my $key, just so we know what value we're dealing with. And then there's this built-in called keys, and when you give it a hash, it'll iterate over just the keys. So it's going to iterate over just foo and herp. All right, and then what that allows us to do, though, is we can access then the value of whatever the key is that we're currently iterating over. So here we're printing out, we're just kind of reporting what the contents of the hash are. Key is what we're iterating over, and then the value is we're accessing the content of that slot in the hash using $key. Okay, so and I'll run it. All right, so this is the output here. So key value herp, value dirt, key value foo, or key is herp, value is dirt, key is foo, value is bar. I'm gonna run it a couple more times because I might get a different order. I was getting a different order last time. There we go. See it changed? That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, see it changed back? Okay. Okay, so with Bash, it's a very similar process. Instead of, oh, wait a minute, let me do this. So that line 41 is the same. Okay, line 41 on each one is the assignment. Oh, no, wait, I messed that up. Okay, line 40 is the assignment. Bash has some funky declaration here, declare -a hash. I don't know what that's just how you declare a hash. And then you can assign each slot a key and a value. So here we're creating foo bar, herp dirt, and then this is a loop that prints it out in the same way. Now it looks like it's iterating over differently using a dollar, open curly, and then a exclamation point, and then this @ symbol to indicate everything over it. Now what I suspect is that this exclamation point is saying iterate over all the keys. That's what it looks like it's doing, because I gets assigned foo or herp, and then here we can just iterate the key. Let me make this more clear. Okay, so key, and then this is how we access the element here. And conceptually, it's exactly the same as before. What did I do? I did something wrong. I don't know. Let's take it back to I. That worked before. Declare. That's weird. Oh, I know why that's broken. No, I don't. That's weird. It was working before. In any case, that's a side-by-side comparison. Yeah, I hope you all got confused as to which was Perl and which was Bash.
You use $4 I with that word?
No, in Bash.
Yeah.
No, and so one of the things is in shell scripts, when you do an assignment, you don't have like the dollar in front of it. It's just the plain variable.
Oh, okay.
With Perl, you pretty much always have a sigil in front of it.
Okay.
Otherwise, it'll start. If you don't define it in some way, it'll complain about a bare word.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen that error, but yes.
On the Perl side there, when iterating over, if you don't use the keys inside the parentheses there, would it list like key value instead of just keys?
We can try that. I think that that will happen. So key will get assigned. I took out the other thing because it'll probably just result in undefined. Okay, so yeah. Key, foo, key bar. Oh, yeah. So here it's iterating over everything. So the way that Perl, internally Perl will treat a hash as it's either a key value pair, okay, a list of key values, or a flattened list of 4 elements, okay?
Where it's like I don't know, is it 0 indexed?
don't know.
We'll say for this it is.
You
So
may-
like 0 would be the key, 1 would be the value,
Exactly.
2 would be a key,
Yes.
3 would be a value.
Yes. And if you've ever seen the error, you've got an odd number of elements in a hash assignment or something like that, that means that you have assigned it a list and it's an odd number of things. It's expecting basically tuples, like pairs of things, and then the first in that pair is the key, the second in that pair is the value, and then it'll put it into an actual hash for you. But Perl has done a lot of work. The developers have done a lot of work over the years to make going from between hashes and arrays and scalars seamless. It used to be where you had to be very explicit about iterating over keys or printing lists. Like I didn't even know you could print an array. I thought you had to just, because in the past you would do print and an array, and it would like print this. It's like an internal thing representation. It's like array in all caps and then like some memory address. I don't know when that changed, but obviously I never tried to do it that way. Yes.
So, what do you do if you're wanting to do like a table? So where the key is row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, and you have columns. So it's not a pair. It's not a key and a value. It's a key and 4 values.
Okay, that's when we get into references. So you would have a hash, and the key would point to an array reference, and you would have a list of things.
So it's a hash of arrays.
It is a hash of arrays. Okay.
And
You
you can
could-
sort them. in
There's
your hash.
a way to sort them. So you can have arbitrary data structures. You can have arrays of hashes of arrays of arrays of arrays of hashes, like all the way down. Any combination you can do it that way. The only difference is once you get beyond that first level, you're going to be using dereferencing notation, because you can't. It's not an accessible array or hash. You're basically going through a series of references to get to the data structure that you want, and then but once you have it, you can dereference it to an array and treat it exactly like an array or a hash or a scalar or whatever it is. So a lot of that's where a lot of the complexity comes from in the Perl code. When you start looking at, say our code, there's just like nested things and arrows and curly braces, and it's just like, what am I looking at? You're looking at a complex data structure that is just pointing to different other anonymous data structures. And I say anonymous because it doesn't actually have a name. Like when we get to talk about subroutines, there's ways to assign an anonymous subroutine to a scalar, and then in order to call that subroutine, you can't call a name. You have to use dereferencing syntax on that scalar value to make the call. So it's kind of like a hidden subroutine. I mean, it's not really hidden, but it's not. You don't call it like a normal subroutine. So yeah, your question gets into the really confusing parts of Perl.
That was one of the things I really liked about .NET was being able to objectify databases. But that's not necessary in this product, but people do that. So I was wondering how it was done in Perl.
Yeah, there's modules. There's lots of modules that do that. Forget off the top of my head, but we don't do it that way. A lot of the stuff in our code is based on like first generation, old school CGI, ways of doing things. I mean, we're modernizing stuff, but like our database accessing, I'm not saying it's better or worse. I'm not entirely a huge fan of database objects and all that myself, because I guess I just learned the old way. But there's just different schools of thought and different preferences, and one's more implicit than explicit. Like I prefer creating a database handle myself, and doing SQL myself, or using not doing too much work myself, but completely hiding it behind, what do they call those, ORMs or something?
Yeah, object relational mapping.
Yeah, that like if
It
I don't.
depended on the business, and also like in that case, there were DB script people that only did scripting and they did procedures, or if you wanted the developers to do the report changes, they get to code. So it depends on who's available.
Well, you're
we
like-
have procedures to do some of these reports, but we have developers to do these reports.
Right.
What you need changes to is
It's like you're hiding. You know you want to hide the fact that it's even a database from the programmer,
yeah.
right?
It depends. I mean, depends on your
Yeah.
what the business.
There's use for it all over the place. I've seen some really like slick ORM Perl code. It's just it's easier for me to do what I know, and
Yeah, and it's not like we really don't have a whole lot of database dating in our product anyway. So yet, I don't know.
ever.
We'll see
I
what
don't
happens.
know. But yeah, it was a good question though. I think we ran over. I apologize. But any other questions? All right, and I think we have something else in 2 weeks, and I'll if y'all have any feedback, please send it to me on how I can make things better, or you know, if I didn't cover something you want to cover, yes, Ann.
Do we get copies of the scripts?
Oh yeah, I'll put them up on the wiki.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, thank you.